it started.
Right.
Start streaming.
Okay.
You know when somebody's entering into that stuff. And it's not to say that coaching, you don't go back and talk about something.
Is big to.
But if they.
Oh, where's our, clicker?
Really deep-seated,
You know that?
it's coming up on us, especially further down the line, also for these additional assistance. And then, and even if it's, until they get to a place where they really are looking
Right, here it is.
Found it.
Alright.
Oh,
sometimes you.
well, that's why we don't have sound.
Right, that's what I'm saying, maybe it's just that, I think we have some.
Something's wrong with that.
And that's
where's-
Put that in?
And we'll just check that we have sound, and I'm pretty certain we should be good.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing, I don't know, because we're not getting anything here now.
Well, hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
no, we're not getting anything here.
You gotta be getting something.
I'm not hearing anything here either.
You hearing anything over there yet? Do you see anything coming in there?
No, but the thing is there.
Yeah, but you also see it coming in from here.
social.
I'll go check, but you should also see it.
We're not getting any sound through the stream. Nothing.
It's dead, hello. See, it's coming through over there, you can see it. But over here,
Where are these codes?
It's dead.
Huh?
There's nothing coming through.
Okay.
so, makes no sense.
Basically, this is the out, right? Board out. How we go with that?
At least sound on the board better.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we both.
Oh, that's right, go there. Of course, put on 3.
You know what I mean?
Okay, you're gonna get sound.
No, we're not getting sound to the board yet. How is that possible? How did we just lose sound here?
As
It
long
was
as-
off.
As long as it's on 3, that'll be fine.
Okay, so now check the audio there.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Well, you gotta give it a minute.
How do you measure?
Well, that's fine, you can give it time. But, you're, I mean, but, is there sound coming through right now on the board? Obviously, right?
No.
So you can't even hear me out of the speaker?
It bounced.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing here though.
For that, which is the problem
But again, that's a minute. That's a good minute delay, so we have.
We should have heard something by now.
by now.
Well, let's wait till 2:30 and let's see what happens on that side. Well, first off, are you? Okay, you're plugged into here.
Yep, it's turned up.
So. Where's our production processes? We're coming in here, we've got sound here, then the line out.
Microphone jack.
Wait, there you go. There's sound.
Yeah, but that's from the mic.
Nope. No, this is the background thing I keep talking about. Hold on. So, somewhere, it's picking up that background thing. I was talking about.
Coaching relationship, you may be a sponsor, but you do not have any access to what somebody said.
Right.
Oh, 'cause we still don't have sound.
And
General
So that has to be established from the beginning.
actually, it's not.
Why we don't have anything going here?
And some companies, take issue with that.
And you said, never mind.
There's our report.
It's funny, I have companies that can do that. You know, I went through the whole competition.
Coming out of here.
It's coming out of here.
Yeah, it's just that we can't hear.
Well, if it's coming out of here, that means it's going to the stream. So Tim, it's going to the stream. But then why can't I hear it over here? Can't touch it, I don't know. You see, like here's the sound.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think we're going to have to do with that for now.
figure out turning down the sound. No? Yeah, the sound is coming out over here. Yeah. So maybe we might, how about those back? These? I don't know.
Is there an on button? Wait.
So this doesn't even run, right?
Yeah, this.
Alright, so, well, not really, you can't even see the background.
Well, hold on, I just did that a minute ago. You did what? The background image. See, there it is.
Okay.
That's gonna be delayed.
The sound will usually.
Yeah, but if you're getting sound on the TV, it's coming from here.
Right, that makes sense. That's why you didn't get any sound there. It's sending the sound to the TV.
Oh, really?
Probably.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You can take a break, you can pick up, you can whatever. But what I find is people come in and out of coaching, once they've experienced it.
Okay.
So we're good to go.
Allow them to get through.
What's that?
The barriers that they have.
No, it isn't.
Oh, that's good.
We do have to do recording thing there. Come on, let's get that right. And so go to record. And I said, no, that stays on. We're just, yeah. The only thing that never stops is the control Q. The stream, you guys don't really end the show. Alright, so, no, I didn't, I gotta record.
And you
I
said
gotta,
once, twice a
I'm
week,
gonna share.
8, 10 hours.
A couple of times a month,
Okay.
and it's about 11, it's like, you get really good at home. Oh, yeah, I never.
Right? And.
Hey, Peter, how you doing? Too much midnight.
Again, the other compadre, huh? He's back in Detroit, it's all good. So what's going to happen here is we're actually live right now, and this is how we always kind of do things. So we have a...
So can he see my feet down there?
Nope, everything's pretty much...
Good,
right from
good.
here.
I can fidget all I want down there, right?
Exactly, that's exactly at that point. And really just, you can just relax, and it is fine. You definitely do want to just kind of speak up a little bit more because we have, as opposed to miking the individual. And the reason for that is when we actually try to do an audience, we want the audience to be able to ask a question. You really can't hear necessarily what they're asking, but at least socially it feels as though that's kind of happening.
Okay, great.
What they're doing right now is they're actually going to be loading up the show so that we can follow forward. You'll see that there'll be some countdowns just to try to keep us on pace. Peter did want to try to keep it at 30 minutes, but I have about 8 minutes at the end that I've just left as room.
Okay.
So if we try to keep pace, that's good. We can always come back to it.
Right.
And she did say earlier, and I did ask that she's really good with just keeping it flow, and if it runs over a few minutes, she's fine with that. Good. So
It's
with
better,
that,
better
let
for
me
them
know
to
when.
cut.
All right. What's that?
It's better for you to have more to cut and slice and spice.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of put that out there, and a lot of stuff is very. And give me your name again.
Lynn,
And the last name.
desert.
Desert. Oh, just.
Yes, just like the desert.
Okay. Oh, that's easy.
Yes.
That's very easy.
Yeah.
It's not dessert.
Right.
Okay, it's a desert.
It's spelt like dessert, but it's pronounced desert.
Okay.
And
I was like wondering.
Now we confused him.
make me want. No. Now I'm just kind of riding through the desert on a horse with no name.
There you go.
Yeah. And see, now this is all that. Like, if there was anybody tuned in live, and we, again, because we're just learning this, we're not promoting. So it's unlikely that people are tuned in live, but they'd hear all of this banter. They'd be watching us. Also, on the right-hand
we're
side,
not
as
live.
he's putting this up, if people were tuned in, they could actually be asking questions live right from their browser.
Cool.
And we could actually take
But
those
we're not
answers.
there yet.
We're live technically, but we're not promoting it, so there probably won't be anybody actually watching. So
Oh, you mean I could have had somebody
we'll do this again.
pulled in?
We'll do it again. Yeah, the
gonna
big
be-
thing is to try to find that pace, find that comfort, and as we've said, it's taken us a number of months to find those feels that are good. But
Bear with me for just a minute.
oh, you're changing the time to start again.
Yeah.
You're good.
Now I
with that.
can't read that. Do I need to be able to
No,
read
you
that?
don't need to
Good.
read that. That's all
Good.
behind the scenes
Because I
stuff.
left my glasses over there. So I
So-
figured I'm
So
just
you're
going
out
to
of
reach
town
out.
next week.
Maybe. I'm still looking for some tickets.
Where are you trying to go?
Puerto Rico.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, we're trying to escape for at least a week, but tickets are crazy.
Just needing a break. Too much work.
Well, yeah, we need to take some breaks, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'll probably tag along with you on that.
Get in the suitcase.
Do you, all right, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're actually going to begin, okay, so,
I didn't, the introduction didn't.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, we'll go ahead and just, you guys cue us in and we'll get going from there.
Go ahead and switch it. Yep.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Leadership Roundtable on Udicci.TV. This is our, third session?
Third or fourth?
Third, fourth, who's counting? I am. I'm Chuck Lavecchi, is Peter Rios, and today we're joined by Lynn Desert, and we're going to be talking a little bit about executive coaching. Is that correct?
That's right. Lynn Desert is president of Leadership Breakthrough, and so we're excited that she has joined us today. And so you guys are going to learn a lot about what is coaching and leadership in general, and we're excited to have her.
You know, it was one of the things I wanted to kind of just generally start getting our head around is like leadership versus coaching, right? And in my head, if I put in the concept of a coach on a field, a football coach, right? And they are a leader, but yet they're also different. Yeah. So what do you think is the difference between a leader and a coach?
Or are there any differences?
Or are there any differences?
Well, hopefully a great leader knows how to be a great coach.
Okay.
And not
okay.
all the time is a coach a great leader.
How do you? That's. Maybe we'll cover this, and if we're going to cover it, but I like. So tell me, what is the difference between leader and coach to you? Because what you just said, I think, is really powerful, and people understand it. Because I get it, I generally get it. But how would you define the difference?
Okay, so I'll define the difference, but the difference isn't necessarily how it affects the kind of work that I do, which we can do separately. But a coach is somebody who's there to ask very specific types of questions that opens up the thought process of the individual who they're working with to be able to kind of bust through different barriers or whatever it is stalling them from moving forward. And so that is not necessarily a role where you're a lead person, because you're not showing somebody the way. You're helping that individual find the way.
Interesting.
Okay? So in a leader role, you're going to be out front, holding the flag, moving along, and everybody's going to be following you, right?
Championing the cause.
Exactly.
And I guess that's your point, too, is if you're a good coach, those followers, you don't want them to be followers, you want them to be leaders, but you want them to discover that leadership piece.
Exactly, and everybody is
Okay.
unique and everybody's different. And so, in fact, I just had this conversation with somebody on the phone today that we were talking, and we talked about this difference around coaching. And I said to him, it's not what I want, it's not what your mother wants, it's not what your spouse wants, it's what you want. And so I have to make sure that my agenda is not getting in the way of you being able to fulfill whatever it is that you want to do in life. And
That's
I'm
right.
there to help you do that.
That's a great piece, too, is to make sure your own agenda's not there.
So we'll, just so that the audience knows who you are and what is executive coaching, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came to be a coach, and what is executive coaching?
Sure. Let me start from where I came from. My background was predominantly, I had an undergrad in social work, went and got my MBA, and then moved on into business, worked in business for 17 years as a human resource executive, where I coached executives along the way. About 10 years ago, I stepped out, started my own business. It wasn't Leadership Breakthrough at the time, it was a different business. But I concentrated in doing a lot of group work, and then I all of a sudden kind of got pulled back into the executive coaching side of things. And so I started to do executive coaching, where really the core of my business today is mostly executive coaching. I've also worked, predominantly my client groups are what I consider to be high achievers. That's kind of my niche. And so high achievers are anyone who could be starting out in their career or later in their career, but they're people who are really on that upward climb. I mean, they're going for the gold, okay? And because they have such high goals and lofty goals, it's kind of interesting. Those individuals also sometimes have a lot of self-doubt. They lose, and they don't tell people about it, and they don't want to tell people about it because they have this persona out there that basically says, I'm going like this. And so, having a coach available to them where they can actually talk about that and kind of figure out what's driving that and be able to, you know, how do I get rid of that? You know, how can I bust through that? Really, then their confidence starts to exude, and then they can go after what it is that they want to do. And so, you know, that's kind of the work that I love doing.
You said something that I want to come back to if we have later in the show, and it's your social work, your human resource. What a great combination. And I want to come back to that, but I don't want to get out. So if you guys remember in our wrap-up time.
Sure.
But I do want to ask, like, so why do executives... Why do they seek coaching? Because I'm thinking, like, you know, I want to be one of those. I want to be one of those people on the upward trends, and it doesn't exactly sit there and go, right, don't we all, right?
Yeah.
And do we sit there and go, hey, I need a coach? What is it that is like starts that I need a coach?
You know, it starts differently with a lot of individuals. Sometimes it's self-initiated, and sometimes it's company-initiated, and those are kind of two different tracks, and I work with both of those different tracks, whether it's a corporation coming to me and saying, we've got an executive, for example, who we've just promoted into a really big job, and that job is going to require them to stretch skills and to look at their behaviors in a different way, interact with people in a different way, and we know it's going to be a challenge. And we don't have the luxury of having them to figure out for the next year and a half how to do it. And so when they pair a coach with an individual in that situation, they're really trying to fast track their development. Okay, the same thing holds true for somebody who's an individual who comes and works with an executive coach on their own. They may be struggling, and oftentimes this is the work that I get involved in, is around career. You know, because now, in the old days, you know, I want to say old days, 20 years ago, you know.
Be careful with that.
I know,
old days.
I know, the old days. Companies used to manage your career for you.
Right.
And they don't do that anymore.
But they can't.
They can't, they don't have
Times
the
are just
they don't have the
robust,
resources,
I mean,
and plus with the advent of the new employment contract, everybody is kind of leaves. They don't stay for 20 years anymore, right, in an organization. And because of that fact, what has happened is that each individual, you had to take care of yourself, and you have to map your own career out. But do you really have the skill sets to do that? Probably not to the best of your ability, okay? And so, you know, seeking out somebody who can help you kind of think through all those possibilities and say, am I working in the area that I'm passionate around? Am I working with the right kind of people? Am I in the right organization? What do I aspire to, and how do I need to take the right steps to be able to get there? And oh, by the way, I even get these situations where people are currently in jobs and they're having struggles with their boss, or they know they want the next promotion, or they have to do, you know, or they have to go and interview, and they haven't interviewed for, you know, a lot of years, and it's important to them. They say, gosh, I need some help with somebody to really refine those skills and those capabilities. And that's where the coach helps.
So you really kind of help people identify their inner purpose, if you will, and hopefully create a career track, if it's available in that organization, to create here. And I'm going to skip a beat here. I think that's really interesting in today's corporation, in today's world. You're absolutely right. In the past, it was, here's your job, go do it. No longer is that sufficient. People are finding, like, you know what, I can find my purpose, I can find something I enjoy to do more often, and corporations need a little bit more flexible, and it actually benefits them to be flexible, right? Am I right in that? Or?
Well, it helps organizations to be flexible. It doesn't always help the employee, because the employee feels kind of left off to the side sometimes. They're not getting the attention. They're not getting the personal development one-on-one time that they used to have, I think, as much.
So in the past, where it was training to do your job, what you're starting to see, and it makes a tremendous amount of sense, is the emergence of coaching to find your role.
Coaching to find your role, or coaching to define the skills that you need to go, and taking personal responsibility to go develop those versus, you know, thinking that the company is going to do that for you.
Well, would you work with a person, or do you get hired to work with people who are like, we just don't know what to do with this woman or this guy? I mean, they're not really producing, and you know,
Would you hire her for me? Thanks, I appreciate
would you work
that.
with something like that, or is it? Because I mean, I know that coaching, like we were talking earlier, the difference between counseling and coaching. You know, so
I know.
coaching being that you take out the best of somebody and you're kind of showing them what can be or whatever. Where counseling is like, okay, we assume that somebody's broken and
Right.
needs some restructuring, and so like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, or I have no idea where I'm going. Or would you work with somebody like that?
That's a really great question, because what I call it is, those are the fix-its.
Oh, the
that's
The
interesting.
fix-its, yes.
Fix-its.
And I don't do fix-its anymore. And I used to be really good at fix-its when I was in corporate America. And they would send me to different assignments. I would go in and I would fix it. And I know that's a really strong skill set of mine. So when I went away to get certified as a coach last year, that was something that really bubbled to the top and said, you know what, I really have to back off of the fix-it.
Wow.
And I have to really change my approach and make sure that what I'm doing is what they want to do and how they're moving forward. And those are the key words, is how do you move forward? Not so much how do I fix it. Now, sometimes there may be a little fix-it that's involved, but if the whole thing is fix-it, And I'm going to also share with you, and this is one of the things that I've learned in working with companies that come when they want you to fix it. Typically, they've already made the decision that the employee's going to leave,
Oh, geez.
and it's a disaster. And so I really press back on the company and say, if you are just looking for a way to move that person out of the organization, you need to take ownership of it and just do it yourself. You don't bring in a coach to kind of ease the way through
Right.
it.
Can we kind of back up on it? Because I think that's a very interesting perspective, and I get it, and I get where it's going. But you say you don't like taking on the fix-its anymore, and they're out there.
Yes.
And in many ways, I would say those are likely the people who have determined that they have the greatest understanding of all things, and they don't need to be taught anything, and everybody else is wrong. And I could be wrong on that, but that's when you say fix-it, it starts to come to mind anyways.
Not always.
Okay.
Sometimes the fix-its they've gone through a progressive discipline process and they're just not getting along with a lot of people. It may be a very senior person and there's some liability associated with getting rid of the person. So we're going to do one last ditch effort, bring them in a coach, show that we've done everything we possibly can before we let them go.
Okay, I got you.
Okay?
Okay.
That's the ultimate fix.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate you clarifying that, because in my head I'm like, okay, I could see the fix-it person,
Right.
that one who might also be known as stubborn, right? And sometimes they're very difficult to move forward. You're okay with working with that person as long as the organization wants them in the long term because they find real value in that person.
Right.
But you don't want the one that's like, all right, we've done everything, and now we're in the CYA mode, so come on in. Because basically,
You got
that's
it.
no good for anybody.
That's
okay.
right. You got
that
it.
makes a lot of
And then
sense.
so there are the fix-its in the counseling category, or
Well, sometimes
can you
they're-
define, or can you tell us what is counseling, what is
Yeah,
coaching? Because I
great
know
question.
people get those confused.
Absolutely, and I even find that when I meet with somebody,
Right.
that somebody falls into the counseling side. And, so the counseling is really dealing with these patterns of behavior that have more psychological in nature in terms of things that have to be corrected. And so the person is always living in the past. They're always going back to what didn't work back here versus thinking about how do I move forward to the next thing, and knowing that maybe some of these could be barriers, but yet I know I'm on a path that I'm ready to move forward. Okay, they're not stuck back here. And I had a situation where I had a client that I started working with, and it became very obvious within the second session that she really needed to be in the counseling. And so at that point, it's incumbent upon me professionally to say one of a couple of things. One is, either you can augment our work with somebody who's professional that can help you, or we need to suspend our work, and at the point that you're ready, then come back and we can revisit whether we can work together.
And again, I'm going to kind of throw this teaser out. Your past in social work really uniquely qualifies you for that, because you're going to have that care and that compassion and the desire to help the person.
Right. Right.
But if you go too far down that path, you're actually going to be hindering their professional development.
Yeah, but she's no longer in the fix-it business.
I get you. Right.
Thank
Exactly.
you.
That's
Thank
what I'm
you.
saying. It's like a
joking.
unique
Got it.
qualification because you're going to want to,
Right.
but you're going to know enough. If I do, I'm actually hurting the person professionally a little bit
Right.
more than.
Well, and the other thing is I'm not licensed to do that here in the state anyways. I
Okay.
mean, and that's a license, in many states, it's a licensed
Right.
professional.
And you don't want to get sued or then
No,
somebody say,
no.
oh, because I was getting coached by Lynn Desert that, I could do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And she counseled me. No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
coached you. So,
That's right.
I mean, huge difference.
You have to be really clear about those with individuals.
So, what are some of the challenges? I mean, we're hearing some, if you will, right? We're hearing some, but what are some of the challenges you face when, okay, people maybe they do recognize that they recognize that they need help? What kind of challenges do you face in the person who knows they need help? And what kind of challenges do you face in the organization that asks you to come in and help and make?
Good.
We were talking about this a little
Yeah.
bit earlier. So let me talk about the first one, about the challenge. And this I find, unless somebody has worked with and I'll use an acronym here, it's called ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, which is one of the highest esteemed credentials that's in the world right now. And people who have gone through that training are certified in it, have a certain way that they know they have to work with somebody. And so what happens is that when somebody comes and asks to be coached, one of the first things I ask is, have you been coached before? Okay?
Good question.
Right. And what's been your experience? Has it been with somebody who's been certified? What worked, what didn't work? And I get a real good sense of whether or not that person is, and I don't like to use this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, kind of trained in coaching.
Trained in coaching.
Trained, yeah. Because there's a certain methodology that you use in coaching that is really powerful and effective. And so when I talk about that, and I ask the question, and this is where the differentiation is we talked a little bit earlier about counseling, okay, and coaching, but there's another one which is called advising. All right, and there's a consultant or an advisor, kind of that role and that hat. And people I find typically who've worked with coaches that are not certified have worked with more of an advisor who calls himself a coach. And so an advisor is going to give you information from an expertise level.
Right.
Okay, this is what I think you should do.
Right.
This is, and through experiences, okay?
Sure.
Recommendations.
And
Sure.
recommendations and
Oh, I like that.
suggestions and those kinds of things. Whereas a coach does not do that.
You more are opening up their own mind to help
Right.
them discover what they think based
Right.
on all the other information that they have that you are not necessarily privy to, how to make that better.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. And so, and not to say that it's not important that I have
That's
expertise
great.
in that area, because that helps me with the questioning. It helps me pose the right questions to open up the mind. Okay, so that's part of the training, is getting them to a place where they don't initially say in the beginning of the session, Lynn, I'd really like to get your opinion on this. Well, okay. Well, you're not going to get my opinion on this right away.
Nice.
And that's what I tell them. I say, you know what? Let's go through, let's talk about it, and at the end, if there's some pearls of wisdom that I can share with you, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that, were you going to, because I'm like,
No,
there's
go
thousands-
for it.
we want to
No,
talk
yeah,
about a bunch of
exactly.
things, right?
I'm sitting here. Yeah, exactly.
So, then I can easily see the difference then between consulting and coaching, right?
Yes.
Consulting, people are actually looking for you to tell them what to do,
Right.
to give them recommendations, suggestions, referrals,
Yes.
to think for them.
Yes.
But coaching, you are basically helping people to further along their own thinking. Right? Am I kind of correct? Or
You're
do you want to
right on.
expand on that in
No,
terms of, because I'm a consultant, I advise, right? And yeah, you're paying me to tell you what to do. I'm
Right.
pretty good at it too. I mean, I can tell you what to do like this. But then coaching, well, then you don't need me to think for you. You get a coach. So,
What I'm hearing here too, though, is this is like the big coaching, as you said. A good leader is a good coach. but not, coaching isn't necessarily leadership. So it's really just a component of leadership. And
Yes.
in my head, as I hear you talking, I'm sitting here thinking, a good leader is going to be somebody who can challenge, encourage, and coach.
Right.
And they're all along the same kind of vein, because we're going to challenge people as leaders time and again, like, all right, I'm going to confront you on your...
Yeah, see, think of it as you're wearing a different hat.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
A leader's going to have a different hat. They're going to have a coach hat. They're going to have a leader hat. They're going to
Right.
have a this hat. And, you know, whereas a coach really has, and the coach can change hats to a consultant,
Sure.
advisor, whatever.
Or vice
but-
versa, I
But
would
what they
think.
have to do is be very deliberate and generally ask permission and say, I would like to put on my coach hat, or we're going to work as a coach, I'd like to put on my consultant hat right now. Do you mind if I give you that information? Because it's up to you to say, yes, I'm willing to accept it.
Right.
Okay?
And from an organizational standpoint, if I'm the leader, if I'm the CEO, if I'm the XYZ, and we're working together, and you can't necessarily see what it is I see, sometimes I need to bring in the coach who says, look, I just need you to almost jimmy open the mind a little bit, help them to see things a little bit. And again, you're not trying to tell them what to think, but as a leader, I can understand the people who are following me. If I'm in an organization, I'm like, wow, what tremendous value, but we're having this one little issue here where the person has just come up against almost like their own, they've created their own ceiling, right? They've determined, I'm doing this all right. And you're going, yes, in the role you're playing right now, you're doing it all right, but we see you here. And for you to get here, we need you to see this. And you're trying to, you can come in and help them see that, where maybe the leader or the CEO wouldn't be able to because they're a little too close to the
They're
situation.
too close to it, or, you know, it's interesting because the higher you go up the organization, the less likely you are to have those kinds of candid conversations.
Okay.
You know, I mean, unless you have a really, really good relationship with somebody, you tiptoe. And I find a lot of the executives, while they're very good technically and very good business, their interpersonal skills kind of get in the way sometimes, you know, and now all of a sudden they're managing huge organizations and they've got to manage them in a different way. We got time for an example?
Absolutely,
Anyone?
absolutely.
So this is somebody that I was working with. It was interesting because we had this conversation about, you know, he was sharing with me how his team was a little split. You know, there was this core of individuals that were over here, and he had an off-site meeting, and they all huddled around him because he's a newly appointed executive. And so, you know, you kind of know what they're doing, right? They
Yeah.
want to be around the boss, right? And then there's this one sole person that's over here in the corner who isn't part of the group. All right? It's not part of the group. And so he's going through this, and he's kind of in a way, you know, saying, oh, you know, isn't that kind of funny that he's over there? And, you know, I've been trying to get him to come over. He won't pay any attention to me, you know, and that kind of thing. Okay? So we move along in our conversation, and a little later on, he starts to share with me that one of the challenges he has is getting people to step up and voice their opinions.
That's interesting.
Okay? Now, do you think that I could tie those two things together?
Absolutely.
And that's what
Absolutely.
I did. And I asked the question about, well, let's go back to that situation that you had. Do you really think that those people, your core team, is going to speak up? And maybe that other person is speaking up, you know? I mean, think about the dynamics of this group. And he's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I told him, I said, you know, this is not just about what you say, it's about your actions, your behaviors, and how you're handling these situations, and they're all reading the clues.
Yeah.
And what you want to create in your executive team, you've got control over. And so, you know, perhaps those are some things that we should really talk through and a little bit further about. So it's those subtle clues that they don't always necessarily connect the dots, but because of the experiences that I've had, I can connect them, and because I'm listening really well, you know, I have a way to kind of pull through their own examples, and then as soon as it's like right in front of their face like this, it's like, oh wow, I can't get rid of that.
Right.
You know, the mirror's there. Because it's not my example, it's their own example. Right.
Can somebody be a coach that have issues listening and And another question would be,
Just stay a leader.
yeah. And another question would be, do coaches do interventions, or is that what you're saying? Was that kind of like an intervention?
Well,
Yeah, because
the
it's
first,
borderline
yeah, I
fix
got
it.
that.
the
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
question is, yes, you have to be a very good listener, because otherwise you would not necessarily pick this up.
Right.
And I do a lot of work, as I was sharing with you, over the phone. I don't have to do it in person, because,
That's
and
good.
this was
Yeah.
through the phone, okay?
Okay.
And and it's interesting because
Interesting.
he happens to be local. We met the first time and he said, we're going to meet in person, So the first meeting, I'm waiting for him, and all of a sudden the phone rings and he says, well, I couldn't make it, I'm on the phone. And every session since then has been on the phone.
How interesting.
And he said, I got over that real quick. So you can be extremely effective on the phone.
Which I can see, like, oftentimes people want that first connection, but then honestly, if you really want to grow, it's really, tell me what I need to hear. Tell me what I need to hear, and okay, let me open up a little bit. So I can see why.
See, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
See, you're
No,
just
what I
testing
need to
me
hear.
right
No,
now.
what I need to hear.
No, I will be asking you the questions for
And
you
you're-
to
yeah.
figure
Socratic
out what you want
leadership.
to
You
hear.
ask the questions that I need to hear.
You have to think. You have to be able to learn how to think. And
Yeah.
I think that's
You
huge
do.
in leadership, because people are so used to that hierarchical leadership where you're told what to do.
That's
but
right.
that's
That's
the
right.
new leadership. The new generation leadership is helping people to learn how to think for themselves. I love to compare it to the leader follower, because we are all leaders. We all have potential to be great leaders, but then at times it's your hat. Okay, maybe in one context I'm a leader, but in
Right.
another context I have to put my follower hat on, because the folks who I'm surrounded with, they are more experienced, more knowledgeable. Just going ahead doing things that I've never done. Where you know what I mean, right? So. Do you find that coaching executives, maybe some of them are hard pressed or feel kind of uncomfortable to even submit to your coaching? Is that an issue?
That's an interesting question. In that situation,
Of course it is. I'm a great leader.
He came to me. He came to me.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So he actually identified his own need and sought out a coach, which I commend him. And it was the first time he's ever done that.
No.
But there are situations, and you had asked the question earlier, and I didn't forget because I listened well,
Oh, yeah.
about companies and what that relationship is. There are times when companies will say, well, you need a coach right now, okay, which then gets into the,
Right.
they're getting pushed into something.
Right.
And that's something that I tread very lightly with. I want to make sure that the person wants to be coached. And if they don't, then it's not a good relationship to walk into. It's not any fun for me, quite frankly, and it's not fun for them. Again, because they're viewing it as I'm trying to get fixed, even though they may
Right.
not be getting fixed.
Or what's wrong with me?
Or what's wrong with me? Why aren't I good? And executives, let's face it, they all have egos, and I get that. He does. You just got.
It's okay. I'll coach him later.
That's part of the show. Actually, you'll probably school me, but that's all.
But the fact of the matter is you have to have an ego to get to where you are.
Right.
Okay? But it's about how do you manage that ego in front of others and manage it with yourself. And sometimes it gets a little out of whack, and that's the value of a coach, is they can kind of say, let's just step back here.
I think something to really be a true leader, you need to have humility, but absolutely that arrogance, that pride, that is what tells a leader, I can do this even though nobody else has ever
Right.
done it, right? I love the quote by Walt Disney, it's kind of fun to do the impossible, right? He had to have a little arrogance there, right? He had to have a little arrogance to think he could achieve what has never been done, but
That's right.
as you become a leader, more and more you recognize, what, it's not all about me, and it can't be.
Right.
But what I'm hearing you say right now is, I don't care how humble you try to be, and you try as a leader to really open yourself up to be seen, there's always going to be those places, those little things that you can't see. Even if you could be staring right at it, and if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what you as a coach do. You try to open up those little pieces that all of a sudden let the light shine through.
Yes, and so, what I call it oftentimes is it's the blind spots,
There you go.
okay? The blind
That's probably
spots
the
that are
easier way of
there.
saying what I was just saying.
Right.
He has a lot
It's
of
the
those.
blind
I have a
spots.
lot of those. That'll be honest.
And I'll share with you a really great technique to be able to get to the blind
Yes,
spot. right?
absolutely.
And I use this a lot when somebody is
Tell me,
really
you paying
hard
attention?
and fast.
It's the blind spots.
Really hard and fast on something, right?
Say that again, please.
When they're really hard and fast on whatever issue it is that they have, I ask them to turn it 180 degrees. And what would they do? And there's usually silence. Okay? And then the wheels are turning. And they're going, I can't even imagine it 180 degrees. Oh, and if I did have to do that, what would I do? That kind of thing. And that's the power of getting people to think differently, is really knowing how to turn the dial.
I'm going to throw in a little promo pitch here because this will be good for you. I mean, you kind of get the idea of the 180. All right, customer-based brand equity, and I am going to go a little tangent, is actually a model of creating your brand by looking at your own business through the eyes of the customer.
Yes.
So often we want to actually just deliver to the customer, and CBBE is actually a technique that we've kind of simplified for small business. But that is one of the most difficult things for people to do, is to say, look at yourself how everybody else sees you. Well, they must see this. No, that's not what they see. So as we work on we'll have to remember that kind of piece. Go ahead.
No, sure. It's always about the customer in business, but in coaching, how do you translate that? And also, do we have another? I know that in terms of what are the benefits of coaching?
Yeah.
Because I know what they are, but some people
You do?
are going to
What
watch.
are they?
There, thank you.
I can't
thank you.
answer
I keep
that
trying to
question.
tell me he doesn't know everything.
I have my coach hat on now.
Well, no, I'm asking you. If you,
I
if you
think
were
what
getting coached.
yeah, sure. I think that one benefit would be to help me think outside the box, and to help me align. Because a coach is going along with the person being coached to see what the future can be.
Right.
So I see a coach as a visionary, somebody who's applying strategic foresight to. I can go deeper and deeper, but I don't want to take your glory here. So.
Well, you know what? The thing about it is coaching is different to every person.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of what their outcomes are and what benefits they're going to get. But what I have found, we've been talking about executive coaching, clearly what I have heard from the executives that I work with is I have nobody else that I can talk to inside of the organization. Because if I do, I'm going to get judged by whatever it is that I say. And it could, I may want to say something stupid. I may want to work through this, thought process. But I can't do that in my environment. Because guess what? At that level, the risk is too great. Because of whatever you do from a misstep, that means you're out the door.
Boy, that is incredibly encouraging to hear you explain that, and we see that constantly. I mean, and here's the thing: working as consultants, vendors, we see that constantly because there's oftentimes I'll have customers who are more comfortable speaking with me, a vendor,
Yes.
than their own organization because what's the risk to them? They lose me as a vendor. They fire me as a vendor but they know, hey, I can speak in confidence, and that's so encouraging to understand. That's one of the benefits of coaching.
It
is that you actually help people. Maybe I'll say it this way: formulate their own thoughts in a way that they can bring back to their organization so that the strength that they have can be realized.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
So, it can
That's
be
encouraging.
We should have
working.
tweeted that.
It's on video.
I'll get tweeted later.
Actually, that'd be fun. What we'll do is we'll create a thing that says tweet this.
Right.
And we'll just have it pick up the audio, do it automatically.
That's right.
Yeah, give us another year.
That's right.
Where we interrupted you.
No, I think
Auto
that was
tweets?
great. He already tweeted?
No. Tim does all the programming, so I just will add that to his.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits, though? What other benefits? I mean, if we just did a quick little rundown, if you could.
One of the other benefits.
And let me just throw this little wrench in there. Benefits of coaching. Then what are the benefits of getting coached by Lynn Desert?
Oh.
So that's
exactly.
So these are
general. What are the benefits of coaching? And then bam, robust coaching from.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna marry the two, if that's okay. Okay, because I really think these are the things that the value propositions that I bring. So the effect, let's go back to what you talked about, was that, they can go back with a clearer message to the organization. And what's the effect of that? It's huge. It impacts every single person in their organization. Because then they get inspired, they have good direction, they have good leadership, they feel that they can speak up. All of the things that if the message is clear, that organization's not wasting time and they're getting to their product, their services to market faster. They're developing the relationships they can.
That's
So when you
interesting. That's good.
when you go to the top and you do a really good
That's
job
good.
at the top, it cascades all the way down. Okay? So let's go back to the individual level where I said, they can't talk about that. It's interesting, they even tell me they can't talk to their spouses about it. How many of your does your spouse really understand what you do day in and day out if you were to ask them that question?
No.
We're on camera.
No. And she'd say the same thing to me.
Yeah.
And you can appreciate it. She's a human resource manager. I get it, but I don't get it.
Right.
I get
Kinda
it.
get
Yeah,
it.
you understand this piece and this piece, but I don't
Exactly.
get it. I don't understand what they go through.
So, right.
I can try to be compassionate, but I really can't.
And if they have a problem at work, they can vent to you, right? But you can't help them solve that
That's right.
problem necessarily. And so that's the other thing that a coach provides is it's an avenue for being able to ask those critical questions. It's also a place where they can be vulnerable.
And I was just about to say a
Right.
non-bias,
But see, that to me,
I don't
that-
judge.
I love the non-bias. That's great.
Because it's not my agenda, it's their agenda. I'm there to support them, but I'm also there, and then most of the time they give you permission, and this is what they want me to call out something. And so we develop enough trust with one another that I'm able then to call out and say, just like that other behavior of saying, what's wrong with this picture here? That I can do that in a way that I don't have to worry about I'm getting fired because I'm one of their employees or whatever. I mean, because I'm in a different type of relationship with them.
Right.
That's powerful.
But then again, that goes back and it kind of almost sounds like counseling.
No.
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 It's
No.
not
You're
counseling.
hearing wrong. You need to work on your listening.
Maybe. I'm a contrarian, so I like to, kind of.
Yeah, it's
cool
like
and talk.
look,
So yeah.
But, you did mention something a little bit earlier, and I think this plays into also what's really important at the executive level is this whole thing of confidentiality. And that is one of the things that we have to work through as a coach. There's a lot of organizations that don't understand that boundary because while an organization may pay for the service, what we would call them then as a sponsor, they are not entitled to the information of
That's
within the
interesting. I
didn't know that.
discussions.
That's interesting.
Okay, now what they can do is they can say, we want to pay this, and this is kind of the progress we want to see, the development. Then there can be a measurement system that's put in place to do that in conjunction with the person who's getting coached who agrees to do that. If there's no agreement, I don't do it.
Have you ever found a situation where the person has to agree because they want to keep their job? Because, you know what I mean?
That's a
Like,
piece.
Well, that's
Right.
But
but it could be a slim line, though. I mean, it could be a gray area where it's like, I would love to get coached, but I really don't want my CEO to really know all the intricacies about.
Well, they aren't going to know the intricacies, the conversations.
gonna know the progress.
Right. So for example, an example of a progress might be that we do a 360 at the beginning, we do a 360 feedback at the end, and we show improvement along some behaviors that maybe have been identified, and that's something that is agreed, that's shared in the beginning and the end.
So we're going to need to wrap up a little bit, but I want to ask a couple questions. You say 360. I was going to ask just a couple rapid fires. Do you, we've heard of like these DISC assessments. Is that part of the coaching that you do? Do you have assessments that you use with people, or is it really just much more personal interaction?
I use assessments where it's needed. I'm not certified in DISC, but I'm certified in the Herman Brain Dominance and CCP and also the Center for Creative Leadership.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of them. I
Yes.
wasn't sure what they are.
There's over 10,000 assessments out
Yeah,
there.
that's.
So,
So I guess what's the process if somebody wants coaching, and then what's the process when you start it? Let's get an idea. If somebody's going to say, I need this, how do they reach out to you? What can they expect to happen? Then if they say yes, what can they expect to happen?
Right. So the first thing I do, they hit my website. That's
Okay.
where I get a lot of leads in terms of people who want coaching because they're searching on it. They say executive coach or career coach or whatever. And then they contact me, and I also have what I have called a coaching assessment. Readiness assessment. I ask people oftentimes to fill that out. It's about 10 questions. It helps them kind of gauge whether they're ready to do it or not. And then the next step is, they can read over the different types of services I have. And if I'm in their price range and things are copacetic, then we move on to the next step where I usually have a half-hour strategy mini coaching session. They can experience a little bit. I can understand what their outcomes are, their goals, and then we make a decision jointly. Is this somebody that I want to take on, and am I a good fit with them? And at that point, we talk about the engagement.
Okay.
And that's done on an individual basis. Companies are done a whole different
So
way.
it could be 3 weeks, it could be 3 years. I mean, I doubt it's going to be 3 years, but there's no hard and fast how long this is going to take. It's not every week, it's not every month. It's
Oh, you mean the coaching itself?
yeah, like how? Yeah, what would that typically?
I do a minimum of 3 months,
Okay.
and then I have 6 months, and then it can go on, or you can take a break and come back.
Come back and
Yeah.
and is it a weekly session, half hour, or again just
Yep.
different for everybody? Or?
Usually 2 hours a month. For the executive
2 hours a
level,
month.
it's 3 hours, about 2.5 hours a month.
Does a person ever graduate from coaching? I mean, they say, you know what, I don't need any more coaching. I'm great. I'm
Yeah.
good to go. I mean,
They
go
or is
from-
that something that maybe you would judge or gauge?
Nope,
Or
I don't gauge that. They can, what we can say is you've made or you've met that accomplishment, and we're going to, celebrate in that success. But at some point, at another time in their life, they may decide
Right.
they want to come back
because we can always get better.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
It's the next plateau, it's the next one, the next one.
When you begin a coaching, do you, and like you talked about creating a progress, is that something you work with the individual, say, okay, how are you going to determine that you've grown? How, or like, do you work with them to create their own measuring stick?
Yeah, usually in that mini coaching session,
Yep.
we figure out what the big mega goal is. We call it the mega outcome. And they may not reach the mega outcome. There may be a milestone along the way. But the power of that is if I know where you want to go, say, 10 years from now, and you're working on something that's a shorter term goal, I can frame the questions to make sure that the decisions that you're making today are going to help you reach the 10-year mark, and which is really powerful.
That's awesome.
All right, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. So far, I know you haven't been able to. Would you be willing to come back at another time, continue some conversation?
Well, we'll have to work on scheduling, but yes.
Yeah, we'll
I'd
work
be
on
happy to
scheduling.
do
Yeah.
that.
And before you go, I do want to come back and just for a minute and reach back. Tell us a little bit about your social. Like, how did you get into social work, and then what was your
Oh, my
progression?
gosh.
Because you think social work, and
I know.
again, I get it. My wife works in a long-term care facility, so you generally get where. How'd you go from there? What was your path?
Well, I initially, when I went into college, I selected social work as my major.
Okay.
And so I did a lot of practicums during college. I graduated, I'm not going to say when, but I graduated from college, and I went out to go look for a job, and it was $10,000 a year for the job. And I went back to my father.
that part-time, or?
No, that's
No,
full-time.
no, that's social work.
I know,
right.
And I said to my father, I don't know if I can live on that. And he says, you got champagne taste. I don't know how you're going to live on it, and I don't know why you picked social work as a major kind of thing, So
Now you told me, Dad. How about some coaching? How about some
I was
coaching?
saying,
way back?
he didn't have any, he didn't
Well, I
get any
didn't listen
coaching.
to my dad back then.
Yeah, who
that
does?
was like, So he sat down with me. He says, you ought to really think about going into business.
Mm-hmm.
And then my social work professor told me I was a traitor for, kind of going to
Right.
the dark side.
Right.
you didn't
Because
go
I
get
was
your
going to go
MSW.
over where you could get money.
Right. Because certainly
versus-
capitalism is against helping people.
I
Right?
know.
Right.
I was, and I ended up taking some of the practicum, intro business classes and said, and then I applied to Miami University and got a full ride for my MBA.
Oh, nice.
And so I spun down to Miami University, got that done, And then I went back to see my social work professor and said, well, let me just tell you what salary I got coming out of a year later, which was like $27,000 a year. I mean, it was like huge. And he said, well, I guess I might forgive you, kind of thing. But, yeah. But, but having a liberal arts background, I think, has been really critical. And with understanding kind of the fabric of, organizational development and just the organizational politicking, and, you develop that sixth sense. Your sensory is in a different zone, okay? Even though I happen to be very technically based in terms of my approach and very, methodical, it's come into play really, really nicely, and it's worked well when I moved into the HR role.
That's great. Can I don't know if I think we're closing, right?
Yeah.
Could you just tell us any last minutes what's on your mind about coaching or anything that you would like to tell us, and then also how can people get a hold of you? So if they want coaching, if they want to coach, pretty sure people who are viewing today are very impressed. I know I am.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
thank you.
I was
Chuck
actually
will
going to see if you
sponsor.
wanted to start creating a coaching roundtable instead of shop.
Hopefully, Chuck will sponsor my coaching sessions. So, anyways, but yeah, anybody, anything that's on your mind, and
I guess I'd leave it with people that if you're exploring coaching, and it's okay to explore, certainly go and read about it. But I always tell people it's good to, talk to a couple of different people. Chemistry is important. I think credentials is important. Background can be important also. And, do your homework, do your due diligence around it. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's your gut that's going to tell you just go and do it. And it should be hopefully a good experience for you. If it's not a good experience, get out of it. And also make sure you tell your coach if it's not working for you, because they can fine-tune and make adjustments along the way. And if they don't accept that type of feedback, you're with the wrong person. Okay? Yes. And
That's interesting.
how to get a hold of you?
Okay, how to get hold of me. You can get hold of me, probably the best way is my company website is called Leadership Breakthrough, and it's www.leadershipbreakthrough.com, and I can be reached at lynn@leadershipbreakthrough.com, and the phone number is 585-733-1113, and hopefully I'll hear from you.
Perfect.
Great.
So, actually, I want to thank you because it actually was great to come on. It was that's very encouraging hearing what you're saying. And one of the things that Peter and I have talked about in the past is that it seems as though leadership as a whole, it's not some pie in the sky, unreachable. It's not difficult to understand. So often, it's the basics that we forget about. And for me today, that's what I'm hearing. It's like, all right, sometimes we have to just stop what we're doing, stop the spinning cords, and just go, wait, what's going on? And go, oh.
Stop the noise.
Stop the noise.
Yes.
Great way of saying it. So yes. I want to thank, because that's exactly what I heard today, and I appreciate that. So last word as always.
Yeah, I just want to thank Lynn for coming out and being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
And Chuck for always having us. And we just want to let everybody know that no matter where you're at in your life, you can always get further. You can always grow, and there's always people that can assist you, and they are called coaches. So God bless you, and we'll see you soon.
All right.
Take it easy.
Hey.
All right.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Good.
So how do you